Welcome into Pro Football Daily. I'm Jordan Lugo. Thank you so much for being here on our first Power Rankings show here on the channel. Appreciate y'all tuning in. We are getting into AFC Power Rankings. We will, of course, update with the NFC Power Rankings later on this week. Starting out with the AFC, we're going to go ahead and jump to it. Tier 1 for me, Kansas City Chiefs, all by themselves. Talked about it in the first video on this channel. I still think the Kansas City Chiefs are the top dogs in the AFC and in the NFL until someone unseats them and unseats them consistently. I'm going to have a hard time not taking the Chiefs as the top team in the AFC. And Tier 2 is another team all by itself as well for me. That's the Cincinnati Bengals. They are the one team that has actually shown the ability to consistently play good football against the Kansas City Chiefs, among the top contenders, in my opinion. You saw them beat the Chiefs 3 consecutive times prior to last year's AFC Championship, where the Chiefs were able to, of course, get over the top and then go on to win the Super Bowl against the Eagles. I think the Bengals are right there nipping at the heels. I think that they have a great coaching staff. I love what Joe Burrow brings on the offensive side of the ball, of course, with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and the rest of the talent that they have, but can't quite put them in the category of the Kansas City Chiefs, who have just done it longer, more consistently. And I still think Patrick Mahomes is the best offensive player on the planet, and I think that Andy Reid is the best offensive play caller. They've got plenty of talent surrounding those two. So yeah, still Chiefs at 1, Bengals at 2, and those are the top 2 tiers, each team by themselves in a tier. Tier 3 starts to get a little bit bigger for me, right? For me, these are the legitimate contenders, teams that have a chance, if things go right, to potentially upset the apple cart in the AFC, to potentially come out of this conference as the conference champions. And for me, I have the Bills at 3. They're the team behind the Chiefs and Bengals who have been doing it the most consistently in the AFC for the longest amount of time. Josh Allen is an absolute freak at quarterback. They brought in Dalton Kincaid to be an offensive engine, along with, of course, Stephon Diggs and the rest of the talent they have on that offense. They also brought in Osiris Torrance, who I think is going to help them be a little bit more physical at guard. They brought in Damian Harris. I think you're going to see a little bit more ground and pound, or at least the ability to pivot to ground and pound for the Buffalo Bills. Of course, one of the most consistent defenses in the league. At 4, I have the New York Jets. This is a team that, when they had competent quarterback play in 2022, really hard to beat. They have plenty of talent on both sides of the ball. Insert Aaron Rodgers into that equation. If Aaron Rodgers is the good Aaron Rodgers, the one that is actually focused on being a quality teammate, being the best quarterback he can be, the guy who won 2 straight MVPs prior to the 2022 season, the Jets can go as far as they want, I think. I think there's enough talent on that team. I think Aaron Rodgers still has plenty left in the tank if he's willing to be fully committed. At this point, it looks like he is. He's already been at OTAs for the Jets. So I've got the Jets in this tier of legitimate contenders. And even though I have the Bills 3, the Jets 4, and a couple more teams here, you could put them in any order, and I wouldn't really have a big time or a big deal agreeing with you, right? I think that it would be easy to say any of these 4 teams that I have in tier 3 could be at the top or the bottom of the tier. That's why they're in the same tier, right? At 5, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars, my hometown team. The Jaguars, for me, I think with Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence, the potential is there for that to be the second best head coach and quarterback tandem in the AFC behind the Kansas City Chiefs. I think Doug Peterson is a masterful play caller. Trevor Lawrence is going into year 2 in his system. He now has Calvin Ridley to throw the football to. You had Tank Bigsby, Brenton Strange, Anton Harrison to the offense in the draft. I think that that team can be as good as they want. I think defensively, it might not be as stacked as some of the rest of the teams that we've talked about so far, but there's plenty of talent on the defensive side of the ball for the Jaguars. I think going into year 2 in that system, they will improve. The question is, how much will they improve after not really spending in free agency on the defensive side of the ball or taking any players in the draft prior to day 3, right? So the Jaguars are at 5 in the AFC for me. At 6, the last team in the legitimate contenders category for me is the Baltimore Ravens. I think the Ravens adding to that receiver core, giving Lamar Jackson more talent around him, I think they have a real chance to be a better football team. Now, for me, the Ravens still have a lot to prove in the playoffs. They have to prove that they can stay healthy for a season as well. They've been ravaged by injuries the last couple years, and Lamar Jackson's overall success in the playoffs has been a little bit disappointing overall. I think you add Odell Beckham Jr., you love that. You also add Zay Flowers in the draft. You have Mark Andrews at tight end, Rashad Bateman. I think you have plenty to work with on the offensive side of the ball. And of course, they will be a talented defense as well. That's it for tier 3. Next up, tier 4 are the two teams here where I think injuries are truly terrifying. I know I mentioned the Ravens in that category, but Lamar Jackson has been consistent enough for me to look at them as a legitimate contender. And you add in those weapons that I just mentioned, I think the Ravens are in a category with those other teams I mentioned. But getting into tier 4, injuries are scary for me with these teams. The Los Angeles Chargers at 7 overall, they always seem to be injured. They always seem to be shooting themselves in the foot somehow. They have to prove to me that they can win a playoff game, that they can do more than just be a pretty good regular season team that stalls out in the playoffs, right? And then you talk about the Miami Dolphins. This is a team that, from a talent perspective, they are certainly legitimate contenders. But I worry about Tua Tagovailoa. This is a guy you saw. It was scary on the field last year with those head injuries that he suffered. And you're just worried that that could rear its ugly head, unfortunately. So for the Dolphins, I'm not convinced that they can stay healthy at the most important position, quarterback. But if they can, they're absolutely legitimate contenders. Team that could have the best offense in football if Tua can stay healthy and all the other things click around him. I think they have so much talent, so much speed, and a great offensive play caller in Mike McDaniel, of course. That's it for tier 4 for me. Chargers at 7, Dolphins at 8. Tier 5, teams I could see a path to the playoffs, right? I have the Denver Broncos at 9 overall. I know Russell Wilson had a really ugly year in 2022, but bringing in Sean Payton, this is a guy that's a quarterback whisperer. I think he will get Russell Wilson at least closer to Seattle Russell Wilson than what you saw in 2022. And I think there's plenty of talent around that roster for them to be competitive in 2023. Of course, they are in a difficult division with the Kansas City Chiefs and Los Angeles Chargers, but I think with Sean Payton at head coach, who is, in my opinion, one of the best head coaches we've seen over the last 20 years, a guy that absolutely has the cachet and I think the ability to get the Broncos going back in the right direction. I'm not going to predict them to make the playoffs, but I could absolutely see a path. Number 10 overall in the AFC, Tennessee Titans. Look, Mike Vrabel, one of the best coaches in the league today, in my opinion, always has his guys ready. They have talent on defense. Ryan Tannehill is still there. They have some offensive pieces that you can kind of get excited about. They started to rebuild that offensive line a little bit. I'm not projecting them to make the playoffs, but if they snuck in as a wild card in the AFC, would it shock me? Not at all. At 11, we have the Cleveland Browns, and look, the Cleveland Browns have all the talent in the world. I think they have pretty good coaching staff as well. But what it comes down to, can Deshaun Watson play more like the guy that you saw prior to the entire debacle? Or is he going to look more like the guy you saw in 2022 down the stretch last year, who was pedestrian as grits, right? That's the question. And we'll find out this fall, of course. Number 12, I have the Steelers. I think that they are incredibly well coached. You know, Mike Tomlin, just one of the best to ever do it, in my opinion. They have Kenny Pickett, who they feel very confident in. It looks like there's offensive talent around him. The offensive line is improving. Of course, there's tons of defensive talent. Minkah Fitzpatrick, TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward. The list goes on and on when it comes to the Steelers defense. I think they could make a playoff run. I don't see it happening, but because of their coaching, because of some of their talent, I could certainly see the Steelers surprising me in that regard. And same thing goes for the Patriots at 13 overall. The Patriots, Bill Belichick, has been one of the, if not the greatest coach in NFL history. I think he has a lot to prove. I think he's going to be competitive again this year. Every year since they lost Tom Brady, they've been competitive. They just haven't quite been a playoff team. And that's where I have them here again in 2023 in Tier 5. Again, the Broncos at 9, Titans at 10, Browns at 11, Steelers at 12, Patriots at 13. Then I have Tier 6, rookie quarterbacks likely to play a ton. Could be fun. And so I have the Colts at 14 overall here. A team that drafted Anthony Richardson, brought in Shane Steichen from Philadelphia. I think that is a wonderful pairing for Anthony Richardson, for Shane Steichen. The skill set Anthony Richardson brings to the table with Shane Steichen's ability to design an offense around a really powerful and explosive running quarterback. I think it's a match made in heaven. Will they be great in 2023? I doubt it. But I think you'll see a lot of sparks from Anthony Richardson in that offense, and I think you'll be encouraged moving forward. Same thing goes for the Houston Texans at 15 overall, bringing in C.J. Stroud, bringing in Will Anderson, of course, from Alabama as well. They've got the 49ers offensive staff, some of them coming over, of course, their head coach from the San Francisco 49ers, D'Amico Ryans, a former Texans linebacker, one of their best players they've ever had. So you like that pairing, D'Amico Ryans going back to Houston. I like Bobby Sloat getting to coach up CJ Stroud. I think there's plenty there, but I think they're still going to be a little bit too young and just need another year or so of development before they can really start to compete. And then in Tier 7, I have the Raiders at 16 overall in the AFC. Not a fan of what they have done overall. Like, I did like some of their draft picks, certainly, but bringing in Jimmy G in a division where you're competing against Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Russell Wilson, to me, is completely uninspiring. I still don't love everything on the defensive side of the ball. I don't love their offensive line. There are some pieces to work with, but I just don't see anything from the Raiders that I'm like, yeah, this is going to be a team that's really going to spice things up in 2023, a team that's going to compete for the playoffs. And so that's why I have them at the very bottom of the AFC. Will they finish with the worst record in the AFC? Probably not. But I think that they have no chance of making the playoffs. I think they have very little chance of having a positive outlook after the 2023 season unless they're able to end up with one of the top picks in the draft and get themselves Caleb Williams or Drake May. That will do it for my 2023 AFC Power Rankings, first Power Rankings show here on Pro Football Daily. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. You can also hit me up on Twitter at Jordan DeLugo. Hit the like and subscribe button, notification bell so you don't miss a show on here. Have a good one.